Hello everyone and welcome back to Car Venus 14. Now today we are going to be talking about a topic of our favourite waifu. It's Shenhe. Now, as you all know, Shenhe's banner has been confirmed to be coming out in patch 3.5. And so today we are going to be talking about Shenhe and, well, why I think you guys should genuinely invest in her. Now, this is going to be a non-simp based review, so my feelings for Shenhe shall not get in the way of this review. Whether I can promise that or not, I do not know. You have been warned. Now, we'll move on. Starting off with Shenhe herself. Number one, she's very good looking. I've already destroyed my promise to you guys. Saying to you guys already. She's already very good looking. She also has the highest pixel density as well, if you guys were interested in that fact. I think we all know what I mean when I say pixel density. So, yeah. Moving on. Now, Shenhe is very strong. She's very strong, and it's known by many other people that play the game that she's also very strong. So, effectively, why she's very strong is because of her skill right here. Shenhe's elemental skill is able to boost your character's or your entire party's cryo damage bonus. Of course, she's a very niche cryo damage buffer, right? So she can only buff damage dealers that deal damage in cryo, like Ayaka, Ganyu, even though she's not really amazing with Ganyu because of the way that her trigger quota system works. But we'll get onto that. So effectively, Shenhe's trigger quota thing is effectively, what's it called? Where is the point that says she has a trigger quota? I can't find it. Where is it? I can't find it. Anyway, the trigger quota is effectively the number of times that Shenhe's buff will last for each hit. Now, if you didn't know, the trigger quota is every instance of cryo damage that is done to opponents. So it doesn't matter if it's, 2 hits that actually count as 1, right? It doesn't matter if it's anything like that. If it hits 1 time, it counts as 1 trigger quota. And you only have a limited number of these uses, right? So Shenhe can buff cryo damage dealers for a very short amount of time. But I know what it sounds like. She can't buff you for a long time. Well, that's where things get a little bit false. Because the truth is even though she can't actually buff you for a long time, there are ways to make her buff you for a long time, effectively. Now, because Shenhe's trigger quota only lasts for either 5 or 7, it's not a long time. Now, because of that, Hoyoverse have decided to give her stupidly, ludicrously high scalings on her elemental skill. I mean, look at this. I'm at level 10, and of course, the hold damage, and the tap damage is 250%, but the hold damage is 340%. I mean, that's pretty high. So, yeah. And the damage bonus that she gives at level 10 is 82% of her attack. Her total attack, mind you. Not her base, not her bonus, but base and bonus combined. Her total attack. Yeah. At level 8, it's something like 70%, and at level 6, it's 60%. But still, that's still really high, right? Yeah. She's so far a solid support. Now, the cooldown is 10 and 15 seconds respectively. So, she does have a pretty decently long cooldown, but you'll soon learn that that's not too much of an issue. Because, actually, you might think it is a bit of an issue. Because moving on to her elemental burst will reduce the opponent's cryo crit damage. Cryo resistance, I don't know what I'm saying. Cryo resistance and physical resistance. So not only does Shenhe pair well with cryo DPSs, but she also pairs well with physical DPSs that use the cryo element. Kaya, Rosaria, and most importantly, Eula. She can work really well with all of them, although she's not going to buff them ridiculously amazingly like she could with Ayaka, but she can buff them very, very well. So, yeah. Now, at level 10, it's a 15% resistance shred. At level 8, it's 13%, and at level 6, it's 11%. But still, it's really good. The actual damage is basically non-existent, but that's not why Shenhe's ultimate is good. It's because of the resistance shred that it gives, right? Yeah, and at the end of the day, Shenhe was never really meant to do damage. So, yeah. On for her passives, well, this just buffs everyone's cryo damage bonus when they're inside her ult's area. And this actually further buffs Shenhe's elemental skill stuff even more. So if you use the tap variation, your elemental skill and burst increases by 15% for 10 seconds. And if you use the hold variation, it increases your buff, right, by 15% for 15 seconds for your normal charge and plunging attack. So, yeah, she's already got a passive that buffs her icy quills even more. And the thing is this passive isn't limited to just cryo damage. It's also applicable to physical damage. And this is on herself as well, right? So even if you're using a physical damage dealer, this passive can be utilized on herself, and so can her elemental skill. The icicle stacks also apply on her. Yeah. So this is where the story of cryo DPS Shenhe and physical DPS Shenhe begins. We'll get to that part of the story later on. But yeah, so we're going to move on with her actual support kit. Now, her constellations are absolutely amazing. All her constellations are really strong for both cryo DPS, physical DPS, well, maybe not physical DPS as much, as well as support, right? So her C1 just gives her an extra charge. This means you no longer, of her elemental skill, this means you no longer have to choose which buff you want, the tap version or the hold version, because they both do different things. Hold gives you more DPSing power with normal charge and plunging attacks, and the tap buffs your elemental skill and burst damage. Now you no longer have to choose. You can just use both of them. So yeah. And you can also dash twice, which means really good roaming capabilities. Her C2 is one of the good constellations. Her C2 basically extends the duration of the ultimate, although that may not be so good, because, number one, if you are an endgame player, you most likely get to the point where you can kill anyone within, like, a huge mob within, like, 5-10 seconds, right? And the elemental burst already lasts for around 12 seconds. But here's the thing. The second part of the actual passive is more important. After you use the element, right? After you use the elemental burst, when you're inside the field, your cryo crit damage is increased by 15%. Yeah, your cryo crit damage. So it's not your cryo damage, but your cryo crit damage. Yeah. But here's the question. Is that really a problem when you already have this passive that increases your cryo damage bonus? So you've already got the consistency from here, and now you just need the extra power from here. These two go hand in hand. Exactly. These two both go hand in hand. They work really well together. So there you go. She's perfectly balanced so far. Well, balanced, I mean, she's beyond balanced. She's broken, but in terms of the way she distributes and gives out her skills and buffs and powers to her teammates, she's perfectly balanced. No, she's still broken in that regard, but you guys know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. So, yeah. The only problem with this elemental skill is, you might be thinking, but Car Venus, or Venus, as some people call me, there's a problem. With the way that the game is going now, loads of enemies have a lot of safety tools. They can dash away, they can teleport away, they can, they can dash away, they can teleport away, they can leap away, they can, for whatever reason, dig into the ground and appear somewhere else, right? But here's the thing, my friends. Just run a frozen comp. They can't dash away if they can't move, can they? Exactly. So, keeping them in place is going to be brilliant for this. And Shenhe already has really good AoE cryo damage, right? So getting them to freeze, getting enemies to freeze is not going to be too bad of a shout or a deal. So yeah, her C3 is going to be a really good skill because it increases her elemental skills level. So what that effectively means is it will buff everything here. The tap, hold damage, the damage bonus. It won't buff the durations, though, or the cooldown, but other than that, it's buffing the utility as well as its own damage. So that's why this constellation is really good. Now, her C4 is a wall of text, as though it came derived from the Bible itself, but we'll read it anyway. So, well, I won't read it for you guys, but you guys can read it. It's on the screen right now, and I have read it out in previous videos. Effectively, what it does is, when characters use the Icy Quill, right, Shenhe's elemental skill, well, not her elemental skill, but like Shenhe's actual buffing mechanic, when characters use the trigger quota up for Shenhe's Icy Quills, she'll gain a stack of Skyfrost Mantra. So basically, for every one Icy Quill stack used, for every one trigger quota used, Shenhe will gain one Skyfrost Mantra stack. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio, basically. And so what that effectively means is, if you can get many trigger quota stacks effectively, the Skyfrost Mantra will actually increase Shenhe's next elemental skill damage by 5%. Now, she can get up to a total of 50 stacks with this, and each stack lasts for 60 seconds, so you can hold on to them for a very long time, right? Like, you can basically finish one fight and move on to the next fight and still have all those stacks, basically. Yeah, you can have these stacks for a long time. A minute is a long time, if you think about it. So, yeah. But think about it like this, guys. 5% increased damage, and you kind of have up to 50 stacks. So what that theoretically means is, if you manage to get all 50 stacks, which I don't actually think is possible, unless you're in a mono cryo comp or something, right? That means that Shenhe's elemental skill, if the maths is correct, her elemental skill will do 250% increased damage. Yeah. That's a pretty big explosion of damage, if you think about it. That's like a nuclear reactor level of explosion damage. So it's pretty crazy with the amount of damage that she can actually do with this elemental skill. So, yeah. This is just buffing her own damage straight up. Now, of course, this isn't giving your party any benefits. But who doesn't want to say, yes, give me more power to anything that's giving them more power, right? So, yeah, her C5 arguably is the worst constellation out of all of them, because unfortunately... Oh, wait, hold on. Click the wrong button there. Because unfortunately, Shenhe's resistance shred is actually capped at 15%. She cannot go higher than 15%, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's the entire reason Shenhe's elemental skill is used. It doesn't do a lot of damage, and building it for damage doesn't really, like, the scaling doesn't really do much either. So you don't really build Shenhe's, elemental burst for damage. You just level it up for the resistance shred, because that's the utility that it provides. So her C5 is arguably her worst constellation. However, her next constellation, her C6, is by far the most broken one. It may not look like much, but if you read it, it's the quality over the quantity, guys. Quality over quantity. So, effectively, when you have your C6, any character affected by the Icy Quill will now not use any of the trigger quota when they do plunging, charged, or normal attacks. Yeah. Actually, no, it's just normal and charge attacks. But yeah, like, let that sink in for a while. Do you know what this means? This means if you have someone like Ayaka, who is doing loads of normal attacks and loads of hits, you can stack this up very fast. And if you stack this up very fast, and higher, even more damage. So this is just a self-recharging battery, these two. This will charge this up, this will give you more damage, and in return, you get even more chances to use this again in order to stack it up even more. So yeah, it's like a well-made, well-deserved, well-rested charging battery. So yeah. Now moving on to artifacts, I am not going to lie to you guys when I say this. Shenhe is the easiest character to build artifacts for. Why? Because if you guys didn't know, Shenhe's entire elemental skill and her entire purpose is to just buff your party's cryo damage. How does she do that? By giving you all a portion of her attack percent. Right? Yeah. If you are smart enough already, you can see where this is going. All this means is that you just need attack percent on Shenhe. That's all you need. You don't even need to build damage on her, because she's not a damage support. She's not a burst support. She's not a damage sub-DPS support. She's a utility buffer support. And the best part about utility buffer supports is they're the easiest guys or girls to build on the entire planet. So what that effectively means is you could just stack attack percent on Shenhe and she will deliver. That's all you need. You go Gladiator's 2-piece with, Shumanao's 2-piece, or Vermilion Aftermight 2-piece with Echo's Offering 2-piece. You could just build 2 sets that give you both attack percent. 18% attack percent, 18% attack percent. Just 2 sets. And you could literally just go, like, HP attack, and then attack percent, attack percent, attack percent. And she will deliver. She will just give you all the damage in the world. So Shenhe is the easiest character to build out of all of the characters in the game. She's one of the easiest, along with Venti, who it just relies on swell damage, and swell damage is really easy to build as well. So Shenhe is the easiest character to build. All you need is just attack percent. She's very free-to-play friendly, and the artifact sets that you need as well are also very free-to-play friendly. Like, all you need is just attack percent headpieces, and attack percent attack percent artifact stats. Attack percent artifact stats, just to let you know, is actually the second easiest stat to get in the game. The most easiest is HP percentage, but after that it's attack percentage. So, yeah. You can already see how easy Shenhe is to build. You don't have to waste your fragile resin grinding and farming up for, really good pieces, because all you need is just attack percent. You don't need to build her own damage, because that's not what she's meant to do. She's meant to give you damage, not do damage herself. And that's what makes her a beautiful symphony. Anyway, moving on to weapons, right? Staff of Homer is the weapon I use on her, but we'll get onto her DPS in a bit. We're talking about her support right now. Now, the best weapon for support Shenhe, buff Shenhe, give me all your damage Shenhe, basically. No, I'll give you all my damage Shenhe, basically, right? Is Favonius Lance. Why is this weapon the best? Because, number one, it has 565 base attack, right? Number one. Number two, it gives you energy recharge. Now, Shenhe is quite a thirsty individual for energy. I mean, don't you dare take that out of context. I swear, I'm gonna get annoyed. Otherwise, guys, don't do it. Yeah. So she requires quite a bit of energy. Okay. 80 energy. So obviously, if you're going full attack percent, like with everything here, like here attack percent, here attack percent, here attack percent, you're gonna have no room for energy recharge, are you? So you should obviously just go for Favonius Lance. Like, it has high base attack, 565, which was the highest, but then they changed it to like 610 for 4-star weapons now. However, that's not really accessible, because I'm pretty sure only the Ali Flash has that kind of high base attack. Yeah. No, not this. But yeah. So, yeah. Like, it has high base attack, 565. It has 30.6% energy recharge, which, to be brutally honest, is all you really need. Because if you think about it in a realistic composition, you're going to be running Shenhe with another cryo damage dealer, right? And cryo characters can actually produce a decent amount of energy. Kaya's E, Rosaria's E, Eula's E, Ayaka's E, right? Everyone's E, effectively. E, just E, right, guys? E. They're all very good at producing elemental particles. Therefore, Favonius Lance is giving you that energy reach. I'm sorry, it's giving you the energy recharge, right, guys? So yeah. Now the passive is not necessarily a hindrance to Shenhe, because honestly, you're just using Favonius Lance because of the stat stick. The passive is good. It's brilliant. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But don't build around the passive, because you can go critical rate on Shenhe. You definitely can, in order to get the increased energy particles, right? You can do that. But if you go attack percent, it's more worth, because you're giving more damage to your opponents. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Well, if I can't get energy particles on Shenhe, my burst isn't going to be up. And the thing is you can still deal damage without Shenhe's burst. You still can, right? However, Shenhe's burst is the cherry on top, not the cake itself, right? Remember that, guys. Shenhe burst is the cherry on top, not the cake itself. So, even if you don't have Shenhe's burst up 100% of the time, it isn't the be-all, end-all. The ultimate, Shenhe's burst, is just a tool to get you even higher damage numbers. It's not the thing that makes Shenhe. What makes Shenhe is her elemental skill, not her burst. Her elemental skill is her identity, not her burst. So, rather than having the cherry on top of the cake with a 50% chance of getting it, why not just have a 100% chance of taking the cake altogether? Am I right? Besides, I don't think it's fair to say Shenhe is the cake. I think she is the entire damn block of bakeries itself. So, yeah. I would say it's pretty fair that, well, with a physique like Shenhe's, cake is the last thing on your mind when the bakery is right in front of you. A whole block of bakeries. So, yeah. We're starting to derive the topic into Shenhe's looks rather than her actual character, and I'm a person that goes for characters, not looks. It's a lie. That's definitely a huge lie. We'll move on. We'll move on. We will move on. Right, guys. So, as I said, base attack, energy recharge. Base attack is really high. Energy recharge is also a very decent amount, right? If you don't have the Favonius Lance, which is highly unlikely because everyone has the Favonius Lance now, but if you don't have it, or you want a genuine free-to-play option, because Favonius Lance, you can only get it through the gacha, but if you want a true free-to-play option, Prototype Star Glitter, that's also a really good option. You have 510 base attack, which is still a pretty decently high amount, right? It's only 55 less from that, so you're not losing out on too much, right? It has even higher energy recharge, 45.9% energy recharge, and it's free to play accessible, because you will need a prototype for the actual polearm. You will need one, but most likely everyone already has one. So all you need is just one refinement, because the actual passive of the weapon itself, it's not really that brilliant on Shenhe, but as a stat stick, it's a pretty decent option. You can also use the catch as well, even though the actual passive is kind of wasted on her because her burst isn't necessarily about damage. It's still a pretty nice option to have, right? So yeah, but of course, the main drawback with the catch is it actually is mentally depriving. So as you can clearly see from my wall of weapons, I don't have the catch because I wanted my sanity to remain intact. Hence why I decided not to go for the catch. I mean, I love fishing. I really do. In real life, fishing is an absolute treat. In the game, it feels like a chore, and I'm not doing that. I refuse to play Genshin Impact because I have to do it. I play Genshin Impact because I'm gonna love it. I'm gonna love it. I was gonna say I play Genshin Impact because fun, but I realized that's not exactly grammatically correct, and one such as me has to be grammatically correct. So, yeah, I do hope I'm not sounding snobbish, guys. I'm just doing this for the comedic effect. Please, I do apologize. Do say in the comment section if you don't want me to speak like this, but, you know, I'm just experimenting, so yeah. Anyway, that's the weapons tab done, right? And of course, we can't forget about Shenhe's signature weapon, right? The Calamity Queller. The Calamity Queller, which was once a weapon used by a Yaksha. She now owns it. Well, she doesn't own it, she uses it. I think she does, technically speaking, own it now because she uses it, but she didn't buy it. At the end of the day, the consumer's the one that consumes the products. The customer's the one that buys the products. So, is she the consumer or is she the customer? We will never know until she tells us. But she probably won't tell us. Actually, she might tell the Traveler, but just not us. So, yeah, Sag, big Sag. Anyway, yeah, so that's her support. Right, guys, I would say Shenhe, solid support. Back to the serious now. Shenhe's a solid support. Number one, she's very free-to-play friendly. She's easy to build. She's easy to use. Her kit is fairly simple. You don't need constellations in order to actually make her good, right? So I would say from a free-to-play standpoint, Shenhe is an absolute brilliant character to pull for. If you, of course, do need Shenhe. If you don't need Shenhe, if you don't need her buffing or anything, then of course that's your personal choice. You don't need to pull for her. But if you do want Shenhe, then by all means, go for it. I've been using her ever since she came out. In fact, it's the entire identity my channel is based upon now, just Shenhe. So, yeah, I would have to say some nice things about her, obviously. Now, moving on to Shenhe's actual DPS capabilities. Now, I will say they're not the best. She is probably one of the most atrocious DPSs out of all of the polearm characters when it comes to actual scaling, because I believe her scaling is actually a little bit worse than Zhongli's. I mean, we can actually check right now. I have Zhongli triple crowned. No, she's better than Zhongli. Okay, never mind. She's not as bad as Zhongli, but still. Yeah, her scalings aren't exactly brilliant, right? There are 4-star characters out there that actually outshine her when it comes to DPS. So, yeah, her normal attack talents, they're just not up there when it comes to DPSing. But the thing is there's 2 types of DPSs. Physical DPS Shenhe, cryo DPS Shenhe. I will tell you guys this. Cryo DPS Shenhe is the most broken thing on this planet. And of course, I don't exactly have the rights to say that because I haven't actually had Cryo DPS Shenhe. I've never used Cryo DPS Shenhe before, right? I probably never will because I'm just not a believer of Cryo DPS Shenhe. I mean, I believe in it, but I'm just not a fan of it, right? But I will tell you this, Cryo DPS Shenhe is probably the most broken thing to actually ever exist. Because, number 1, you can utilize this. And if you are going to be using Shenhe as a DPS, you're going to be triple crowning her. So, yeah. Her elemental skill, she can buff herself, right? Number 1. And number 2, she can also use this on herself as well, right? This will also apply with Cryo DPS Shenhe, and so will this. Now, of course, if you're going physical DPS Shenhe, this passive is basically useless. It's not going to do much. This elemental skill is also not going to do anything. It's basically useless, right? So, yeah, the unfortunate thing about physical DPS Shenhe is you don't actually have access to her elemental skills damage buff at all. And this is where majority of the damage that Shenhe is going to be giving herself is coming from. So compared to an actual damage ceiling, physical DPS Shenhe is much, much, much lower compared to cryo DPS Shenhe. That's why cryo DPS Shenhe is infinitely stronger compared to physical DPS Shenhe. But I'm here to enjoy lore-accurate Shenhe, not cryo DPS Shenhe. So, I will stick with my decision until the end of days. Anyway, we're moving on to, well, we've already discussed her passive, but like I said, guys, Shenhe is going to be buffing herself, and with cryo DPS Shenhe, you're going to be running Chongyun because he's the only one that can actually provide constant cryo application through your normal attacks. So, yeah, you're going to be running Shenhe with Chongyun, making the lore-accurate duo, right? As for constellations, well, her C1 is actually pretty good for, well, all her constellations are brilliant for DPS Shenhe, right? But her C1 is really good for many reasons. Now you have access to 2 dashes, right? So effectively your open world roaming capabilities have increased, and you also have 2 charges, so you don't need to choose between which buff you actually want. You can use both the tap and the hold, and you get both damages. So, yeah. Physical DPS Shenhe as well as cryo DPS Shenhe can actually make use of this really well. This one, well, cryo DPS Shenhe can utilize this constellation fully. Physical DPS not so much because, you know, you won't get the cryo crit damage bonus, but you will get an increased duration. However, I will say this, guys, don't get too excited for the C2 because if you are confident in being able to destroy opponents, right, within 12 seconds... Physical damage dealers I'm talking about. Physical DPS Shenhe enjoyers out there, if you feel as though you can kill opponents within 12 seconds, you do not need this constellation. There's no need for you to go for it, right? You can save your Primo Gems, go for something else. You have no need to go for this if you feel as though you can one-bang someone within 12 seconds. And 12 seconds is a pretty long time. But for my cryo damage bonus, DPS dealers, enjoyers, fan favorers, I'm running out of adjectives here. The cryo crit damage bonus is really good. Now, even if you are going to be able to one-bang someone within the Divine Maiden's Deliverance, the ultimate, right? This is still a good constellation to go for because it gives you more crit damage within your cryo field. It just does. So, against tougher opponents, right? You can, you know, have increased cryo crit damage, and who says no to more damage, right? Exactly. But like I said, for physical damage dealers, this is not a required constellation. If you feel as though you can do without it, You don't need it. But cryo damage bonus dealers, users, fan favors, I don't know why I'm saying at this point, is a very good constellation to go for. Even if you feel as though you'll be able to one-bang someone, this is still a very nice constellation to have. C3 is kind of useless for physical DPS. To be fair, the next 4 constellations, physical damage, Shenhe cannot utilize at all, so there's no point, right? So yeah, C3 is going to be a really massive buff, because it's going to be able to increase not only the base damage percentage, right, from the tap and the hold skill, but it's also going to be buffing the attack percentage conversion, right? So, yeah, that just means even more damage for Shenhe, right? And then her C4, well, this is going to be really good, because Shenhe can effectively charge herself. She can convert her Icy Quill trigger quotas into Skyfrost nails. Skyfrost mantras, sorry, not the Skyfrost nail. Skyfrost mantras. And that means she can be doing more damage. So, in an actual rotation with Shenhe and Chongyun, you could probably be able to get around, what? Yeah, about, what? 12, 13, 14, 15 stacks around that point. Yeah, so that would be what? Well, about 60 to 75% bonus damage from her elemental skill if she does the nuclear reactor explosion from her elemental skill. Yeah, it's a pretty nice amount, wouldn't you say, guys? I would say so. Her C5, once again, for Shenhe is kind of useless, because the damage just, well, excuse me, yeah, well, with this build, I feel as though cryo damage bonus Shenhe, all of her skills are going to be dealing more damage because you're building more cryo damage bonus, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that the ultimate just doesn't deal damage anymore. C5, right, I feel as though is going to be a pretty nice constellation for just more damage on your elemental burst, right? Of course, if you do want the damage. But other than that, I wouldn't say this constellation is a must pull for, but you can definitely go for it if you want, because it's going to be a nice cherry on top of the cake. Now, moving on to her C6. Her C6 is beyond broken. I've already stated this in the support area. But, yeah. Her C6 is just going to make it so that she can just keep going at it for 15 solid seconds with her normal and charge attacks, without having to worry about the trigger quota, which means she can infinitely charge this, and these two can keep recharging themselves over and over and over again. So, yeah, like, why not? Now, as for artifacts, well, like I've said, guys, this is a very odd combination of artifacts that I'm using. I'm using the full 4-piece Shimenao's Reminiscence, and I have made a full video on this set and the synergy between Shenhe and Shimenao's Reminiscence, so if you do want to see that, go check it out. I'll link it in the description below. But the gist of it is effectively, this gives you 50% normal charging and plunging attack damage, and this gives you, this passive talent that Shenhe has gives you 15. 50 plus 15 means 65%. 65% increase in normal, charged, and plunging attack damage. Let that sink in. Yeah. Because these are separate multipliers as well, not collective multipliers like physical damage bonus or attack percent bonus or stuff like that, right? It will flat out increase your damage to a stupid amount. It will increase it to a ridiculously high amount. It's going to be crazy, right? Yeah, so that's why I love to run this artifact. Of course, the main drawback with running with this artifact is that you will be losing 15 energy every time you use the skill, right? So, yeah, you will have to get used to not being able to use your burst. But like I said, if you can't use your burst, the burst is the cherry on top. So you don't need to use it to get even more damage. Sure, it would be nice, but if I can, effectively with this set, you're sacrificing 15% physical / cryo resistance shred for 50% bonus normal charging and plunging attack damage. That's a trade-off I'm willing to make. So, if you guys want to make the trade-off as well, I would suggest this set. I definitely would. Now, there is another issue with this set, of course. The set bonus lasts for 10 seconds, but the hold version of the elemental skill lasts for 15 seconds. So there's a 5-second downtime where you won't be able to do anything with this set, right? But that's where C1 comes in. Because I already had the opportunity to get Shenhe's Constellation 1, I thought to myself, well, The only drawback that I could really think of was the 5-second downtime. And of course, it's not a long time, right? You still have like a 90% uptime with the actual skill, right? Around that much. Yeah. So if I have C1, I don't need to worry about this downtime at all because, well, I just have another charge of my elemental skill that I can just use. And so with that, the effects will keep falling onto each other, staggering the actual cooldown. So theoretically, you could go for 3 cycles in which of this actual staggering effect, in which by that point in time, the fight will most likely already be over. So yeah, that's why this set is honestly one of the best sets that I think you can use on Shenhe. Of course, if you are willing to make the sacrifice that you don't have your elemental burst up as much as often, or even might not even be able to use it ever again, or like I've honestly just shunned that out of the window. Like, I hardly ever use my elemental burst in fights now, but with that replacement of 50% increased normal charging and plunging attack bonus, I think that is a very good trade-off for me personally. Of course, your opinions, your Shenhe, your builds, you can do what you wish, guys. Now, of course, the other set that is really good is like a 2-piece physical, what is it, 2-piece Bloodstain, 2-piece Pale Flame. You could also go 4-piece Gladiator's Finale for both the cryo as well as the physical build. But the cryo build has access to something that is very broken. One of the most broken artifact sets in the game, I think. I know I've said the word broken 15 times now. For every time I said broken, I've probably destroyed half of my house. But with each time I say broken, half of my house's furniture is probably gone already. But this set, the Blizzard Strayer set. Now, of course, the Blizzard Strayer set is actually a very good set because, unlike other sets, with this set, you don't have to worry about crit rate anymore. And here's why. Because I'm going to show you guys the magic behind this set. Now, this set, or tell you about the magic behind this set. This set, effectively, the 2 pieces cryo damage bonus by 15%. That's a nice amount. That's whatever, really. The 4-piece is, when you're attacking an opponent affected by cryo, your crit rate towards that opponent is increased by 20%. And if you're attacking an opponent that's frozen, your crit rate towards them is increased by a further 20%. So against an opponent that's frozen, 20% plus 20% is 40%. 40% against frozen opponents, right? Yeah, think about that. 40% from frozen opponents against frozen opponents just from this set alone. All characters come with a base 5% crit rate. So technically speaking, that's 45% crit rate towards opponents that are frozen. And if you're running Shenhe as a cryo DPS, you're going to be using Chongyun, the double cryo resonance. The double cryo resonance is opponents affected by cryo, your crit rate towards them is increased by 15%. And frozen opponents are affected by cryo. So 40 plus the 40 from this set plus the 5 from the base, that's 45. 45 plus 15 from the cryo resonance, that is 60%. From just building a team around this thing, this set's passive, you already have access to 60% crit rate towards opponents that are affected by cryo. Affected by frozen and cryo, yeah. And this isn't even taking into account substats, which you guys might have collected. 60% free crit rate. Exactly. That's a lot. That's a lot of free crit rate. That's a lot, right? So this effectively means you could just put everything into crit damage. Every single bit of your blood, sweat, and tears can just go into crit damage. No more need for crit rate. And 60%, in my opinion, is all you really need. Of course, unless you're doing Spiral Abyss, but I'm not talking about Spiral Abyss. I'm like a casual player, so we here are casuals, we will talk like casuals. So, yeah. So effectively, 60% crit rate is all you really need. Everything else can go into crit damage. This means that Cryo DPS Shenhe is just easier to build because you only need to focus on crit damage and cryo damage bonus now. Not even getting the perfect ratio, because the perfect ratio will be given to you. Now, I'm thinking of a team like this for Cryo DPS Shenhe, which will be brilliant. Shenhe, Chongyun, Xingqi, Bennett. You meet the criteria for Blizzard Strayer. You have a frozen comp, right? You have double cryo. And Bennett's just there because two things. Number one, you have access to Vaporize, which is arguably the best reaction in the game. And number two, you have access to Melt, which is once again arguably the best reaction in the game because they're transformative reactions. So because their multipliers work differently compared to other reactions like the electro-based reactions, you effectively have access to a reaction that can crit. Yeah. And if you apply Melt with Shenhe, the crit damage is going to be coming off of Shenhe herself. At least I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, you can already see how this team is starting to fend for itself. And let's not forget, this is a really good comp because Bennett is giving you a boost in attack, right? So Shenhe's attack is going up even higher, meaning she's going to be getting even more damage through her icy trigger, like her icy quill stacks, as well as her trigger quota, right? And as well as her just normal attacks and stuff. That's going to be even increased even higher. So Bennett's buffing her attack there, and he's also healing her. And let's not forget, like, Bennett arguably is one of the best healers in the game because of the fact that he's the fastest healer, and he heals you up to a decent amount, like 70%. That's all you really need, to be honest. Like, who needs more healing than that? Let's not forget, moving on to the next person, Xingqi. Xingqi is a perfect hydro applicator. He's one of the best 4-star supports in the game, and he's also a tank because of his Rain Sword passive. His Rain Sword passive effectively takes damage away from you into the Rain Swords, and then, if they shatter, they heal you for a portion of the damage that they have taken, right? Or technically not a portion of the damage they've taken, but also the hydro damage bonus, because that's the way that the healing works with Xingqi, right? And then Chongyun. Chongyun not only boosts your, boosts your uptime of cryo damage, but he also increases your attack speed as well. Yeah. So, overall, your DPS is just increasing. And may I remind you that the 3 units I suggested to support Shenhe are all 4 stars. They are all easily accessible because they've been at the very beginning of the game. When the game was released, those 3 were there from the very beginning. So a lot of you guys already have them either sitting around collecting dust, or you're maybe using them and you've already got a few constellations on them. So, exactly. That's just one team that I named for Shenhe. You can go for a swirl comp if you want. You could go for a mono cryo. There we go, mono cryo. You can go for a mono cryo comp if you really wanted to get even more Skyfrost mantra stacks from the icy quill trigger conversions. Yeah, you could do a lot of things with cryo DPS Shenhe. Of course, the problem with physical DPS Shenhe though is that you don't have access to reactions, and reactions mean you don't have access to nuke damage like cryo DPS Shenhe with the melt, right, and the vaporize. But, well, more so the melt. But you know, physical DPS Shenhe has access to something that cryo DPS Shenhe can't have. Superconduct. Superconduct reduces opponents' resistance to physical damage by 40%. 40% straight up physical resistance just gone like that. And it also does a decent amount of cryo damage as well when it applies. So, don't sleep on physical DPS Shenhe, because if you guys have seen my DPS Shenhe video showcases of physical DPS Shenhe, yeah, you'll see how much damage that I can actually do. Of course, there are some things that I have that some players don't have, and that's the Staff of Homer, which is the most broken weapon in the game right now. Well, it was, and I think still is. So, yeah. As for weapons for Shenhe, well, you've got the Staff of Homer, you've got the Calamity Queller for Cryo DPS Shenhe, right? You've got the PJWS, Primordial Jade Wing Spear, right? That's also one of a really strong pole arm, right? And then for 4-star options, well, if you are a free-to-play player, for 4-star options, unfortunately, you really don't have a lot of choices for Cryo DPS Shenhe, because you can't use the Crescent Pike, and you can't use the other option, which is the Star Glitter, right? Prototype Star Glitter. So the only option that I think you guys do really have for Cryo DPS Shenhe is probably something like the Lithic Spear, and that's a gacha weapon, an exclusive gacha weapon. So some of you that don't actually have it might not actually have access to the Lithic Spear. And this is the drawback, in my opinion, of Cryo DPS Shenhe, because finding a weapon for Cryo DPS Shenhe is a lot more difficult than physical DPS Shenhe. Yeah, so, you know, They both have their own advantages, but Lithic Spear is really good because, like I said, if you run the team that I just suggested at Refinement Rank 1, it will give you about, well, this was like 2% or 3%, and this was like, the crit rate it gave was 2% or 3%, and the actual attack percent was like 6%, I believe. So, yeah. Those three itself, 18% attack coming from the weapon passive, and around 6% or 9% crit rate increased from the actual weapon passive itself, which means if you do run the cryo comp that I was talking about, 60% crit rate, that's another 6% or 9%, nearly 70% if it's 3% crit rate for each party member. But yeah, and that's without using any artifact sets or artifact substats or artifact main stats. Yeah, you can see how powerful Cryo DPS Shenhe can get without even trying. So, yeah, but in terms of weapons, I will say physical DPS Shenhe is easier to use, or easier to look weapons for, because you have access to the Crescent Pike. The Crescent Pike is so strong. It is one of the best 4-star weapons in the actual game because of how broken it is. Just to let you know, the passive actually also scales with physical damage bonus because because the Crescent Pike's passive actually deals physical damage as well. If you go double Pale Flame with double Bloodstain Chivalry, right, the damage that the Crescent Pike can do over a course of a duration is very strong. Yeah, and also the separate damage that Crescent Pike can do can actually crit itself. Yeah, it can crit. Yeah, the separate damage numbers can crit. So yeah. A little bit busted, the Crescent Pike is. As for the Dragon Spine Spear, I would just stay away from this weapon, because even on cryo characters, this weapon is just complete doo-doo. It's not good. So yeah, just stay away from this weapon. Just don't do it, guys. Don't do it at all. So yeah, that is what I'm going to say about Shenhe. Her cryo DPS, her physical DPS, and her support are all really strong. Support, just to round things off, she's one of the easiest characters to build. She's one of the cheapest characters to build because you don't need to give her too many resources in order to do much, right? She's very beginner friendly as well to use. She's also quite forgiving, right? So, as for drawbacks, the only drawbacks I can actually think of is the fact that the material, the world boss material that she requires is from the Enkanomiya boss, and the Enkanomiya boss is very difficult because of the fact that they deal true damage, and they also, one of them is Cryo, and Cryo, if you guys know, is the most annoying status effect in the game. So, yeah. And, there's 2 of them that you have to kill. So, yeah, and if you don't kill both of them fast enough, I think they respawn. I can't actually remember. I've done that boss a while ago. Like a year ago, the last time I did it. Because, yeah. And then there's, of course, the fact that you need to do La Signora's boss battle in order to get her weekly Ascension materials for talents. So that's also annoying. But other than that, Shenhe is by far one of the best characters to use. Because, number 1, she's free-to-play friendly. She's very affordable. She's very easy to use. She's very free-to-play friendly to build and stuff like that. So yeah, she's just one of the best characters all around. She hardly has any drawbacks. But yeah, that's basically it, guys. This video is dragged out for longer than I actually anticipated. I think I wanted to make this a 15-minute video, but of course I always end up waffling over the same point over and over again, with my silly analogies as well. But other than that, that will effectively be it. If you guys do want to see my Shenhe build, though, here it is. 58.7% crit rate with 230.4% crit damage. No energy recharge at all because I ain't about that life. Physical damage bonus of 58.3%. HP is 22,591. Attack is 2,304. And elemental mastery, is 16. Defense is 1,142. So a bit tankier than normal Shenhe's, and max stamina is 240. So yeah, friendship level 10 as well, because of course, why not? Anyway, guys, that's basically been it from me. I have been Carvenus14 and still am, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all very, very soon. Goodbye.